Well, my name is Taji Chesimet. I am currently the executive director of Raising Justice, and I oversee all the programs that we do. And we obviously are a Portland-based organization, but a lot of our team is based in Chicago right now. So we're doing a lot of remote work on policy in Portland, and this is sort of a burgeoning field of young people wanting to step into these really adult-centric spaces and trying to make some really large changes, and telling them we are not going to just stick with the status quo of how we've traditionally looked at incremental changes to criminal justice, and really trying to usher in the new period of public safety and transformative justice that sort of works with and for the community rather than against them. So Raising Justice was actually formerly known as Youth Educating Police. We initially were founded in 2017, and when I first met Britt, we came across the idea, and it sounded like the perfect idea to keep pushing on and keep trying to move forward with, and knowing that there was not a lot of youth who are working in this field, or a lot of youth who were trying to, step into an adult field of work. So we really wanted to engage in that, not only from those perspectives and seeing there being a lot of potential for change, but also just as I grew up, I knew and saw and felt a lot of the inequities of the criminal justice system, whether it be policing, whether it be the juvenile system, and really wanting to find ways to change how I was personally affected by it and how future young people are affected or lack thereof by the system. I was engaging with a lot of people who were involved in what they would call gangs, and a lot of people who had a lot of really bad home relationships and was really just about the street life, as they would say. So we just didn't have the largest support systems in place, and so we got ourselves involved in a lot of things that were not very good. And so when I first started, when police were first called on us for some of the things that we did, and we would be running and trying to hide and not find them, it was always thinking that if we ever had to get ourselves talked to, or well, we did get talked to, but if we ever had to go with the police somewhere, we thought our lives would. So we sort of just often were very aggro, against the system, against the people, whether it's teachers, administrators, police that were in our schools, or police that were in our neighborhoods a lot. Stuff that we knew it was wrong. We knew right and wrong from each other, and we were doing wrong, but we didn't see the benefit of doing right, or see the benefit of caring about the system, because it didn't seem like the system would help us if we did. Largest things I noticed was some of the times we had police called on us to deal with situations. One time my friend's dad was hitting my friends, so they came to my house, and the police came to our house, and we described what happened, and the police just had a horrible demeanor, horrible care of what happened, and sort of supporting my friends who were all underage, as they showed evidence of them being abused, and I was my mom was there, and I was there, and we were trying to tell them we can't just let them go back to that house and try to deal with that, and the police were just not caring, and they were not caring, they were obviously listening, but they weren't trying to think of a solution or trying to find a way to support the two girls in the circumstances they were in. That was one of them. And then the other one was got booked externally, I guess. I had to go and get involved in the juvenile court system, and thankfully got to do this program that was a couple of nights, and we had to pay a little bit and got to do a rehabilitation process that you wouldn't normally see, but it still is such a niche thing where you have to have never have committed a crime before or been convicted of a crime before, and you also have had to have it be in a certain demeanor of theft, if it's under $500 or something. And that was the only way I was thankfully able to get into this program. And then when I turned 18, got my record expunged from it. And that system was flawed in and of itself, and so it's weird to talk about. Those are called diversion programs, and I've learned that now, but I didn't know that's what they were called, and I didn't know those were accessible to young people, and those are very much new programs for a lot of juvenile systems. So that being involved in them and going through one of the programs and sort of navigating the difficulties of them. Like, for example, I did the program and my friend also was booked for the crime, but she never went through the program. So she probably still has the record on her case, but like the reason she didn't do the program is because like her family didn't have any of the like language pieces of things that needed to be done to get into the program. So it was like a whole barrier to anyone who like wanted to also take advantage of this. So she could still have a record, and there was also like a warrant out for her arrest for not paying the fines because she couldn't afford them. Like they charged an additional like $500 on top of what we stole to make her like pay back that, and she couldn't afford it, and so she had like the warrant out for arrest and they had to like appeal for it. Come off as like people could just like check the box and like we have a diversion program, but they aren't working. And especially when you can tell they're built like the program I was in was specifically meant for like white middle class kids who are stealing and like who could pay the fines, could go to those classes, and having to have their parents also come to it. So like if they had work, they couldn't go to that. Like they had to have all of that set up. In a common poor person's tale, I moved throughout my life, I think 8 times in total, if I remember. And throughout all the communities before I lived in North Portland, the presence of police was very lackluster. And like, we were living literally on the outskirts of like public housing. Like all the housing projects like facing us were all public housing. And so those were all my friends, and those were all the houses I was so familiar and comfortable with. And in those areas, policing was so much different than it was in the other places I lived. And even like the places I lived after North Portland is so much different. I saw countless of like drive-bys and shootings at parks and people having like crazy medical issues that you wouldn't normally think of. And I think one of the fascinating aspects of working with Raising Justice, and I don't know if I would have felt so, I guess, liberated if not for the work and like the research I've had to do. The more I've learned and the more I've grown in the work I've done with Raising Justice, the more I've, I guess, been radicalized into like different ways of thinking, especially around policing and public safety. I guess like initially we knew there was, Britt and I knew there was an issue. We saw this stat like that we used to throw around so often where it was like between the ages of 16 and 19, 3% of interactions are within that age group with police, but 30% of those led to use of force. And this is like an old 2018 or 2008 stat. That was like, wow, that's really bad. Like we need to like stop them from using use of force. And like our solution was rooted in like a very much incremental reformist mindset, which was like, let's try to train police not to kill Black people anymore or kill Black young people anymore or use of force on them. That idea in and of itself was like flawed, but it was also very telling of the times we were in, I guess. For historically, I've always put a lot of responsibility on police departments and doing a lot of things that they shouldn't be handling or shouldn't be doing. So as we've been doing a lot of this work, I see a future where like young people first and foremost are not incarcerated, not even at the rates, but period. We in America don't have a priority of the people, and I think that's present in a lot of the different things we talk about when we're talking about profit over people. And so prisons do this sort of perpetuation as well as policing. When you talk about, you know, we invested, I believe it was like $40 million in body cameras to try to like hold police accountable to not killing Black people, as opposed to like not killing Black people and not having them be in situations where they're allowed to or you know, enabled to kill Black people. And I think that, to answer your question, young people should not be incarcerated. Young people should not have records on their case, and that we should be taking care of our young people in this country, and we don't do that. We really don't, especially BIPOC youth, especially youth of lower income brackets. We do not take care of them, and we try to say we'll put them into a probation system or we'll put them into a juvenile system so that they can know how bad it is in there. And one of the most like crazy things I read about recently was like this kid who was involved in much more gang activity than I was ever involved in, and had ended themselves up in turning themselves into a juvenile system. And the second they got in there, they're like, this is the most alone I've ever felt in my entire life. And why are we making 16-year-old girls, you know, experience that amount of loneliness and expect that to like somehow stop them from wanting to be involved in crime? And we don't need police in a lot of the ways we think about police. And policing has honestly grown side by side with white supremacy's like new matriculation into culture and society. We have pervasive methods to ensure white supremacy is present in all of our systems, whether you're talking about this simple idea of profit over people, or if you're talking about systems like the prison system and the carceral state, and like how we focus so much on crime when really they're creating criminals. They're creating these things to ensure we continuously hold down poor and BIPOC people. And I think that that's in of itself a flawed system. And so I do the work I do because I never want another person like myself to ever experience the being system involved like that. And I probably would put a lot of the ability for me to like come out of that system based on like my mom being like this white woman. And I know she like has, and she was able to, you know, take it from a place where we were on EBT and we still live moderately check to check, but she was able to go to grad school and do all these things, and because of a lot of the privilege she's had in life. And so I have to recognize that like that's how I was able to step out of this system, and I don't think that that's the circumstances a lot of people are subscribed with or prescribed. So that's like why I do this, and that's why I hope my story, along with every other story in this, will really feed a larger like pushback and wave of new and better like reassessments of what we think of as safety, what we think of as criminal justice, what we think of what is just, you know. And I think that that's like what I try to like continuously question and do as I like engage in this on a day-to-day. And I feel like that's hopefully what everyone else thinks of and reflects on as they watch these stories or listen or hear or read about these stories, is how they can really think about what is just in this country.